Hey everyone, how are you? You get to see the kind of ugly workmanlike end of my studio today. Excuse me, I have no quilts loaded at the moment. So yeah, you are seeing the working end of my studio. How is everyone? Oh, let's see. Nancy, intriguing title. Oh yes. Oh yes it is. Kathy in Michigan, Debbie in Morgantown, and another Debbie finally caught alive. Oh no, same Debbie, sorry. Rebecca in the Kitsap Peninsula. Jean in Utah, Linda in Michigan, Gretchen in Ohio. Linda, your leafy meander looks great on my to practice list for sure. Judy in Georgia. Karen in South Africa, awesome. Kay Mueller in Wisconsin. Debbie in Missouri. Michelle in Connecticut, great. Well, I'm Susan Smith. You're in my studio, Stitched by Susan. This is my little mini reality show, and yeah, you're seeing the whole messy reality right there. This morning, my husband Dave and I were doing some filming for my monthly membership, and so we kind of have wires and cords and cables everywhere. But the title of this episode is, When is it time to throw in the towel? So a little backstory for you before we chat about the actual towel throwing. I regularly do on YouTube live streaming of quilting a project. And usually the project is from beginning to end, but for sure it is a reality show. For sure it is unedited, and so everything is there. So you're seeing me working on at least a part of a project, and I don't edit out any of the oopses or even the awkward moments or embarrassing moments, quite frankly. I've had lots of those on air. So it's this little glimpse into the workings of my studio in real time as it happens. But the backstory to today's topic particularly is my last 3 episodes have been absolutely fraught with thread breaks, both bobbin and top thread breaks. And so many of you have commented from the very first one, have commented, it's so good to see that this happens to the professionals too, and I took that in the spirit it was meant. In other words, it's encouraging to know that we all have these tough days. And I kind of just rolled with the punch, if you will. Episode 1, episode 2. Yesterday it happened again. I was live streaming, and just over and over it was taking far longer than it should because I kept having these thread break issues. And a viewer chimed in, and I believe it was Madge. Madge is a pretty regular viewer, and if you see this today, Madge, thank you so many times. Madge very graciously said, hey, have you considered that it could be the thread that you're using? I've been very loyal to the Isacord 100% poly thread. It's what I use 99% of the time. And so Madge said, have you considered that maybe it's the thread you're using? Like, this does seem chronic. Well, having Madge say that made me start thinking, okay, what if I've been hearing your comments, gee, it's encouraging to see you have this trouble happen too. What if I'm kind of misrepresenting? Though those things do happen to machine quilters, it really shouldn't be happening all the time. It shouldn't be the big feature. It shouldn't be what every day of quilting is about. And it seems like it has become that for me recently. Now, I do have some quilts. When I first got my Bernina, I did quite a few quilts that seemed to be problem-free. But the truth is, I don't do as much quilting for people anymore as I used to because I have online classes and my YouTube channel and so forth. I have other administrative or filming type duties, right? So when I got honestly thinking about it, actually a high percentage of my quilts, higher than it should be, I'm having these problems on. So okay, what is it? So here we come to this thought. Is it time to throw in the towel? Is it time to consider a different thread brand? So that was my first thought kind of overnight last night. I'm mulling this over and thinking. But then I took it one step further and thought, is it time to reconsider some other things that I've kind of held dear or that have been my comfortable place, and maybe that's where the problem lies. So this morning, Dave and I are filming an episode for my monthly membership. It's called Advance. And I have some new content, kind of small classes for that each month. So we're filming that, and I'm working on a project, and guess what's happening? Thread break? Absolutely disheartened, discouraged. What in the world is wrong? This should not be chronic. This should not be happening all the time. I had a brainstorm. Those of you who have followed me in recent weeks know that as I got my new Bernina and I was exploring loading methods, I've used the red snapper system for a long time, and I love it. It's very speedy. I absolutely love it. But the Bernina machine, and I won't get too in-depth on this because those of you who don't have Berninas, it won't mean a ton to, but a lot of you may have dead bars or level of bars. You can see mine, I'm trying to get my finger in the right place, just in there where the quilt runs under it as it rolls up. And there's a specified space that should be between that bar and the nose of my machine, right? So that just the quilt fits through there. Well, in order to accommodate the red snappers, I had widened that gap. Now, early on, that seemed to be working. As I said, I did have a number of quilts that went problem-free. Hooray. But now I got thinking yesterday, when is it time to throw in the towel on that red snapper system I'm so attached to if that's the problem? So, this may be a process. Today might not be the final answer, but having had that thought, I did go and lower that bar so that the space is what Bernina specifies it ought to be. And guess what? I've not had a thread break since, and I've done a fair bit of quilting today. So I'm a little bit giddy at the thought that I might have solved that problem. But also I'm realizing, this may not be the final solution. There may be other factors into it, and I'll keep my eyes wide open. But my point today that Madge really started me on the track of thinking about is, when is it time to let go something you've always done, but it's not serving you well now, for whatever reason? Mine is because I got a new machine, but it might be other reasons. I mean, the thread manufacturer might have changed their manufacturing process, and it might not be what it once was. Do you know what I mean? The long-held belief that you shouldn't use 100% polyester quilting threads on a 100% cotton quilt. That's a belief that quilters have held for years and years, and I don't personally think it's true anymore, but do you see what I'm saying? When is it time to throw in the towel on some of those things that you hold dear and move on and open yourself up to a new idea? So I'd love to hear your thoughts. When has this happened for you? Let's scroll back. Dee. Hello, hello, hello. I won't read all the hellos today. Janice in New Mexico visiting my 90-year-old father. Awesome. Janice, next week I'll be away from home because I'm making a trip flying with my 92-year-old dad and mom as well, stepmom. But they just need some support as they're traveling, and I'm the one that lives closest, so I'm going to do it. It's what we do, right? For love of our parents. Claudette in California. So many of you. Georgina in Toronto, Canada. That's my neck of the woods. I was born in the Toronto area. Petra is here from Austria. Petra, you tune in so often. Bless you. It's got to be late in the day for you today. Patricia Minnick, I see you on Facebook a lot. Grant, also visiting his mom. Okay, I'm looking for comments. Debbie, I also have a Bernina Q24 and I had the same problem, and as soon as I fix the dead bar, I rarely have thread breakage anymore. There you go. And if that's the answer, is it worth it? 100 times over. If I have to go back to pinning, I will. Maybe I'll find another new system that I have not ever met before just because I'm now looking for it. Grant, there may be multiple factors. Troubleshooting is like it's peeling an onion, and you're absolutely right about that, Grant. So, if this works, as long as it works, I'll keep riding that trail. But you're right, there are so many factors, and it may be that there's not only one contributing. Linda, so many variables, needle brand and type, name brand versus cheaper options. All true, Linda, but I felt like I had, one of the episodes I was working with 80 weight thread top and bottom, right? And I thought that was the solution when I got away from that thread. So true, there is all these things that play into it. Judy, so are you still using the red snappers? Well, I did have them loaded on today. They were already winding up. But it's true, I cannot lower my dead bar and load a quilt and feed it through, and I won't go into all those details. There are reasons why it's not impossible, but it becomes overly difficult to use the red snappers to where I've sort of lost the advantage of time that I had gained. So at this point, I'm probably not going to be using red snappers. You'll see on my next Live and Unscripted, I'll have done a few more quilts by then, and I'll have a better feel for whether this is in fact the solution. Kimberly, good afternoon. Lynn, I do find sometimes a spool just won't work. I've had that happen too, Lynn, but this has been multiple quilts, multiple fabrics, multiple needles, multiple threads, right? So yeah, all these things to think about. Rebecca Holt, so tights are wonderful. I have heard that. I have not tried them for myself. And maybe that's what Juliana is referring to, the magnetic system that replaces the red snapper. Basically anything that's got a thinner profile, right, is what I'll be looking for. Sandra, I think it's a smart move to try what Bernina recommends and see if the problems stop. Janice, maybe the takeaway is not to purchase a Bernina. You know, you could go that way, but I don't honestly think that that is true. But I do think, who said, Sandra, try what they recommend. Like Bernina has built their machine with certain specifications in mind, as has every brand. And they have reasons for the decisions they made and for what they recommend for spacing or for height or whatever. It's always wise to try what their recommendations are, right? Because there may be a really good reason for that. I do know the reason actually for having that dead bar lower. And other machine brands have the dead bar or leveler bars too. And so they'll have the same recommendation, I'm pretty confident. And that is that your quilt, as it's going through, it's resting on the long arm nose, right? And you want it to stay down fairly close to that. If it starts raising, right, because that leveler bar is not holding it down, then you start getting wobble, especially as you get close to that dead bar with your stitching and your fabric wobbles. Of course, that is going to affect the stitch formation. And I thought that I was able to, manage that little bit. It seemed to be working. Now it seems not to be working. So time will tell. The proof will be in the pudding, right? Consider a zipper system. Yep. I will think about that. I will think about basting them onto leaders. I'll probably try different things and maybe even time different things to see how long they take. Linda, are you only having to give up the snappers on the back side, still can do the beginning of backing and sides? That's actually a great thought, Linda. It may be that I could do half of it, the end toward me with the red snappers. Great thought. Wendy, you've eliminated so many other variables. Your brainstorm may be the answer. It may be. I use leader grips. Good to know. Carol, my red snapper doesn't go between my dead bar and machine. Yeah, I'm reading that all, Carol, and I agree with you, but this is where I say the logistics of like having to stop and break thread at the end of every pass because you've got to move your machine way to the other end and drive around it. You start to lose the time advantage that you had gained. Does that make sense? So, but it'll certainly be something I consider. But you guys have thrown in a lot of great tips. I appreciate that. And this is a process, right? I'll just keep on going, but for now it seems like it's working. I'll proceed with it and I'll go back to pinning for the moment because that's what I have on hand, and I will probably try out some other options. So yeah. Anyway, is it time to throw in the towel? For me, for this moment, it is. It's worth giving up my red snapper loading system to get rid of those really trying, really frustrating chronic thread breaks. So for me, today's the day that I change that over. And keep experimenting. I think that is key here too. Keep trying, keep trying. So Susan Hilly's asking, have you tried a different thread? Yes, I have. I've tried multiple threads and weights, particularly. Quilts for Survivors. Nice to hear how others troubleshoot. Honestly, that has been a real advantage of doing these little live episodes with you guys for the month of April. I'm getting to hear how you troubleshoot too. And I don't have all the answers. I am not the most experienced quilter in the world. I'm just the one that's willing to get on YouTube and talk about it. So I appreciate you all joining and giving me your thoughts as well. It's the hive mind at work here. So briefly before I go, this is the 29th of April. So tomorrow still I will be on live with another topic. And I'm going to consider doing this more often because it's actually been a lot of fun and been things to talk about in 30 days of April. But in fact, I have not run out of things to talk about. Here we are, still going strong. So I appreciate you all joining me. What else did I want to say? I think that's all. I do have a link in the show notes for my free all over feathers design. If you did watch yesterday's live episode, or if you're going to go and watch it, I was quilting my all over freehand feathers on a vintage quilt. So I have a free class that teaches that design step by step. The quilt I was working on yesterday was 30s prints, and so it was really, really difficult, really impossible to see the quilting design. So you got to hear me talking about other facets of the process. But if you want to know the quilting design, check out that free class. There is a link in the show notes below. So I will see you again tomorrow, probably later in the day, and a topic yet to be determined. Feel free to give me suggestions. You can always email me, info@stitchedbysusan.com. Whatever you're doing today, enjoy it thoroughly, and I will catch up with you tomorrow.